Sirens busy jiving. Guess I'll make my move. Crazy feet on Ravelli.
The Earthman, the Travelling Man, the Climate Man, an all-round science buff and music fan. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, Justin Peters. So what do you think will be in lockdown throughout winter, like as a greater community cohort? You know, do you think people are going to go stir crazy, or do you think...
Well, it's going to make it a bit more difficult, isn't it? I mean, it's the first month, I mean, up until the last few days, it's been, you know, lovely weather and, you know, working from home, I can take my dog for a walk during the lunch break, get a bit of sun, but the last few days has just been, no, I'm not stepping out the door.
Yeah.
So yeah, I suppose it'll make it a little bit harder for everyone, but...
You'd have to pick your times throughout the day, because you know what it's like in winter with the rain and the clouds and all that. Well,
exactly.
You would know that. So you'd have to pick the time, and there's always that... Because I know, because I've walked the dog in winter for the last 10 years, and I know that there's always a period, even if they forecast heavy showers throughout the day, there's always that part where you don't get any showers, and you've got to make sure you get into that.
Go and check out the radar. Go and check out the Bureau radar and see where the rain is.
That's it.
You know,
but that's not always accurate, I find. You know, like I know sometimes I look at it and the rain. See, in Coburg it's different, because the rain might come through Altona and you see it and it's pouring down and we miss it.
Yeah, well, look, you know, I mean, rain's a random process, you know, clouds pop up and a bit of rain falls here and a bit of rain falls there, unless it's, you know, kind of widespread from a, you know, something like a cold front or whatever, and, you know, where it kind of sweeps across most of Melbourne. I mean, other times it can just be scattered showers, so it can be a bit of a hit and miss kind of thing, depending on where you are. Yeah.
I think in Coburg we tend to miss a lot of the rain for some reason.
Or I don't know. You'd have to look at the whole,
look
at the whole climatological maps. You know,
if I had to put some money on it, man, I reckon Coburg does. I mean, although
Coburg gets a bit less.
I reckon it gets a bit less. I reckon it does. Because if you're near the water, would you get more if you're near the sea or the bay?
Oh, look, you know, sometimes you can get, you know, like sea breezes, and that can kick up a few, you know, little showers and that just along the coast and so forth. But yeah, I mean, generally your rain's due to bigger, you know, large-scale circulations. You know, we get those sequence of cold fronts, you know, that typically hit Melbourne. So you get, you know, a few sunny days, and then the cold front comes in, it gets, you know, you get a bit of rain, and then it's cold in behind it, and then it, you know, slowly warm up, and, you know, every week or so, you know, we get another one of those coming through.
But they always say that Melbourne's got 4 seasons in one day.
Yeah, exactly.
So
exactly. No, we'll just keep an eye on the radar.
Because I lived in Adelaide for a little while many years ago, and I found, and I was in Adelaide during the winter period, and I remember specifically it was a lot drier in Adelaide.
Yeah, look, you know, so the climate of Melbourne, the rainfall is a little bit more even throughout the year. Adelaide has its peak rainfall during, you know, it's a Mediterranean climate in Adelaide, so that has its peak rainfall during the winter months. Yeah. So, but, you know, Adelaide it's a little bit further north, so it is just a little bit drier than Melbourne. It
was great. I remember waking up in the morning in Glenelg and going, it's like 15, 16 degrees.
Yeah.
And blue skies.
Yeah.
And it's June.
And
it was awesome. You know?
Yeah, look, it can be quite nice. You know, Melbourne's, just a few degrees cooler. We've usually got just a little bit more
when it's
grey skies and,
Yeah, those dark clouds, grey skies. Wind, I mean, that cold wind that comes through from Bass Strait.
Yeah.
You know, that's the killer, man.
Yeah, it comes up from the roaring 40s, you know. Nice cold blast of air.
Yeah, that's it.
Keep the senses alive.
Oh, it certainly does, doesn't it?
Yeah. Look, I mean, Adelaide does have quite a nice climate. You know, don't know if there's much else to say about it. You know, I grew up there, but...
Yeah. Well, the water was always weird, you know, because I remember boiling water for a pasta.
Oh, bloody Adelaide water.
And I was living in an old mansion down in off Jetty Road.
Oh, yeah.
And I turned on the tap, and it was brown water. I've never experienced that before. And I left it running for about 5 minutes and it sort of dissipated, but it was still grainy and brown.
When was this?
That was in 1994.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That late. Yeah, okay. You know, I remember growing up, you know, back in the 70s and 80s, that would happen. You know, I remember sometimes taking baths and it'd be like brown water and I was like, you know, no, I don't want to get in. And Mum's like, no, get in.
And where's that water? Is that generated from the Murray or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, end of the Murray after Queensland and New South Wales and Victoria have dumped all their stuff in it.
Yeah,
we
sure.
get to drink it.
You get to drink it.
Yeah.
So that's why your beer in Adelaide. Which one? It was the Coopers.
Coopers. Yeah. I've wondered about that. Is that why Coopers taste so good? Because of the Adelaide water?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd have to have some. It'd have to have some influence on the water and the taste of it because it has a very distinctive taste, doesn't it?
What, the water?
The beer, the Coopers.
Oh, Coopers, yeah. But I suppose if, you know, all the Adelaide beers were made out of the same kind of water, they'd all have distinctive taste. And I don't know if you can say the same thing about West End.
Yeah. Oh, well, I've never had West End.
You don't want to, mate.
No?
No.
Do they still make it? Or?
As far as I know.
Yeah. And didn't Escort cigarettes come from Adelaide?
I don't know. That's what my dad used to smoke,
I know.
Escort Reds.
Yeah, because that was a big thing in Adelaide, the Escort and the, what was that be? The West End.
West End.
It was West End and Escorts. They were the two things. So
Not like Melbourne with the
had
Winnie Blue and VB.
VB, yeah, that's it. Or Winnie Red and VB.
Winnie Reds. Yeah.
And Peter Jackson and would have a segment there, you know.
Yeah, righto.
So how have you been dealing with lockdown yourself?
Look, you know, it hasn't affected me too much, you know, other than not having to go into work every day. You know, I get up and make myself a coffee and then I sit at the dining room table and I start work. So in some ways that's been good. It, you know, adds an extra couple of hours onto my day for work. And also, you know, it gives me the opportunity to, like I said, I mean, I can take my dog for a walk at lunchtime or I've been going shopping, you know. We live in Coburg. We've got lots of good little specialty shops around. So, you know, normally I'm kind of confined to, your Woolies and your Coles really around here because, you know, I don't get home till usually 6 p.m. at the earliest.
Yeah.
You know, and they're all closed. But, you know, I've been able to go scoot down there at lunchtime and, you know, go to Al Alamy, go to the deli, go to KFL, go to a few other little places, you know, support all the local businesses, Coburg markets. And so, I mean, that's been a big plus. You know, what else? You know, like everyone else, I mean, I can't go and visit my friends and, you know, and so, but, you know, I mean, realistically, that was kind of once a week. And, you know, like I was saying to you before, you know, I've got a Zoom drink scheduled for tonight.
Yes.
So, you know, all in all, I've been lucky. I've kept my job.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, I suppose that's been the hardest thing is you look around and, you know, I know lots of people who are suddenly out of work and struggling. So, you know, that's been the biggest thing, I suppose. You know, it hasn't probably affected me too much personally. Yeah. Not financially, at least.
Yeah.
But kind of looking around, seeing your friends, other members of the community that you used to, you know, just seeing, whether it's, you know, out and about or down the pub, and you know that some of them are struggling.
Yeah, totally.
And, you know, I've got a partner, so, you know, I've got someone to talk to.
Yeah.
You know, luckily we get on well.
That's it.
You know, we're not
you're
not sick of each other.
That's right. There's no which sort of makes me wonder because even though you might be in that position, there's a lot of people who would be, like especially women, you know, who could be in a really bad situation living with their partners and
Absolutely.
And this confinement could be a death knell for a lot of those women, you know?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I haven't kept above the, you know, the figures, but, you know, I've kind of heard, there have been increases in domestic violence and of course, when people are isolated, it makes reaching out that much more difficult. Yeah. You know, so, look, I'm on our, you know, we've got a bit of an OH&S committee at work, and I'm on that, and, you know, we've kind of raised that that at work, I mean, I haven't had any of my fellow colleagues mention that to us, luckily. But it's something to be aware of.
Yeah.
And it's just another one of those kind of disconcerting things that are, going on in the background for everyone's lives. And I mean, obviously we're still not out of it. And,
No.
you're talking about, easing restrictions, but, I suppose it's just going to be baby steps, wait and see what happens, There's always a chance of another outbreak, and I suppose we just have to be prepared for it. And it's going to be a long haul. I mean, it's not just we're going to suddenly go back to work and the restaurants and pubs are open and, suddenly we're seeing live bands and, going to festivals and doing all the good stuff, that people enjoy doing. I think it's going to be a major change in our lifestyles for, look, I reckon at least a good year,
Yeah, right. Okay.
But, on the other hand, we seem to have come out of it, better than other countries. We're not burying hundreds of people a day like they are in some countries. So, I mean, that's been a real bonus. And I think everyone's kind of become a little bit more at ease because, when it first started to ramp up and, the number of cases increasing every day and, and there's a few deaths, then you're kind of preparing for the worst. And, the past few weeks it's been like good news. And so I think that's eased up. I mean, that tension that you felt, say going down the supermarket. I mean, obviously when, no one get the bloody toilet paper or, and you went to the supermarket and you felt like, looters had just gone through it, and it's, it kind of gives you a bit of a uneasy feeling, and you look around your fellow citizens and you think, what's everyone up to here? But thankfully that has dissipated, and I've seen pretty much goodwill. Especially, I mean, you've got to think about people. You think about people on the front line. Obviously, we've got our health service staff, but also the people who work in supermarkets, and they're just dealing with hundreds of customers a day. So, but they're all still at work. So luckily, they haven't been sick. So it's good. Still get to say hello.
That's right.
Have a little bit of a chat. It's one thing I have noticed. I've chatted. People are having a bit more of a chat.
Okay, so it's like the old school shopping. Back in the '60s or something, where you'd go out and you'd be talking to the checkout chick, and it's great.
Yeah, it is.
It sort of brings home a message. I think that even that's a very basic instinct that we should all continue to have throughout this, not only throughout this period, but continuing on after this period.
I would hope so. I would hope so. I was having this discussion the other day, and it's like, in some ways you feel like we're kind of going back to the, 70s or 80s, and, I suppose when we were growing up as kids, it'd be like, you'd say to your mum, Dad, no, look, I'm off on my bike, and they'd say, oh, well, be back by 4 o'clock, and you just go off and meet your friends and ride your bike around the neighbourhood, I suppose, now everyone's a little bit more, they're worried about whatever, stranger danger and all that kind of stuff. But seeing people, you just, you suddenly see all these, there's kids around and, they're on scooters, and you see nice little things. We have one of our neighbours, they've got, two young girls, I don't know what they are, 6 or 7, but, one of their friends had drawn in chalk out the front on the pavement saying, oh, I miss you. And, so there's nice little things that you see like that when you're walking around. And I do feel like there is a bit more of a sense of community. Going up the dog park, I generally don't kind of chat to too many people, but I've, made a few kind of friends, we'll go and have a, walk the dog and let the dogs run and have a bit of a natter. So that's been good.
The chalk's interested me because when I'm walking around the area, I've noticed a lot more kids are drawing on the footpath, which was something that I remember as a kid doing. But I used to do it with paint.
Yeah.
I never used to do it with chalk.
So it'd stay there.
It'd stay there
for years,
to the horror of my father, who'd go, what are you doing?
When you're 18, you're still walking past and seeing that Hopscotch.
Well, not Hopscotch, it was just the Sex Pistols or something like that written on a pole or something like that, And I remember we, New Year's Eve always was a big one, to write the year down, So I remember there was one point where we had 1979 right up until about 1986, all down the, and then the council. I think it took them about 10 years before they actually repaved the street. So it was there.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
I thought that was like, I sort of wanted it to be like the Pharaohs, leaving your mark there.
I remember back in Adelaide, there was this building used to drive past. I think it might have been an old Freemasons. Anyway, it was just like a 1970s cream brick building, and it had the Jam written on the side of it. And I kind of saw it from the time I was about 5-6 years old, and drive past and see the Jam, and it kind of just slowly faded over the years. And then I went back to Adelaide, and I happened to drive past it, and this is probably still 10 years ago. But someone had redrawn over the Jam, so it was like there, and I was like, oh, that's been graffiti there for 30 years or whatever.
Yeah, it's historical. And I reckon they should use that as a museum piece,
Yeah.
I really do. I think, because when I notice, sometimes I do notice on park benches and things like that, people have graffitied into the bench.
Yeah.
I was here 1978.
Yeah.
And I would I've got pictures of it.
Yeah.
And the oldest bit of graffiti that I've taken a photo of would be 1975 or something like that I found.
Yeah, right.
Writing, which was quite faded, but you could just make out. In fact, it was at a laundromat. They actually chiseled it into the table.
Yeah, cool.
So it was great. And I'm going, this is great. This is how old this has got a history. It's actually, when they write in the tables like that, and there's all this graffiti, it just gives you a sense of history.
Absolutely.
And you can reflect on that history. And
who knows? Anthropologists might dig it up in
they can dig it
a
up.
few thousand years.
That's it.
There was something recently I heard I think it was in the British Parliament. They found some kind of, not a secret room, but a room that had been boarded up maybe, I don't know, 150 years ago or thereabouts, and kind of people had just forgotten about it and whatever. Then they were going over old plans, and they realised, there's this room in there, and they went in there, and and they found, one of the carpenters who had, helped build the place, or maybe helped board it up, and had written some graffiti, saying, such and such, written his name, I was here in 1850 or whatever. And
he did do that.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So what was this room? Did it have anything in it? Like, did it have any old artefacts, or did it have like Captain Cook's plans for his conquering of Australia?
I don't think it had anything like that, but apparently it had like some old light bulb that was
okay.
Built when they were first making light bulbs. But yeah, apparently they turned it on and it still worked.
When did you read this?
Oh, it's just, I don't know.
Recently?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic.
A month or two ago,
No, that's a good story.
Yeah.
You can only imagine in old England, especially in London, because Westminster's it's its own country, isn't it, within London?
Yeah, don't know.
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of, it's a independent country within London.
Yeah, okay.
From what I understand, I don't know how true that is. Someone might want to correct me on that, but that's what I remember hearing, and you can only take that as, what you hear is what you hear.
Yeah, okay.
But
this is the Queen's.
Yeah,
whatever. Oh, okay.
yeah.
It probably is something. Weird going on there.
There is.
Royal family's full of weird.
And I reckon they got a couple of. I reckon they got a couple of doors that have been closed. And,
a few skeletons.
In there, mate.
A few closets with a lot of skeletons in there.
Because you've lived in England, haven't you?
I did. Yeah, I lived in England for 3 years in Leeds.
Okay.
Which is kind of north, Yorkshire.
Yeah.
It's about halfway between Edinburgh and London.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
About 1 million people.
Yeah.
It's a good place,
Yeah.
I kind of enjoyed. I mean, it was a bit different, I suppose, the typical thing for Australians is go to England and, I suppose it's really London or Edinburgh that people
gravitate
go
to.
and, so, and I mean, they're both great places.
Yeah.
I mean, London especially is it's a fantastic city, and I went there several times, and you can just see lots of museums and art galleries, and it really is a brilliant city. But it was kind of nice to also get another aspect of England, and plus there weren't really any other Australians around. You know, I didn't do the whole thing where you go and live in, like Australians can do sometimes. You know, they go and live in a foreign country and then just go and hang out with Australians.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So it was, you know, the gritty Northerners. You know,
Yeah.
where they, you know, they all drink bitter rather than lager.
Because I used to have woodwork teachers from Yorkshire,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and they were quite strange teachers. And they left a mark with me because I always freaked out. You know, like they used to make me so nervous trying to teach me woodwork because I couldn't get it. I'm going to be realistic about it. I could not woodwork because I went to a tech school, and they used to wear those grey gum jackets. And they'd have that weird Yorkshire accent, you know.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking of that. Did you ever used to watch The Goodies?
Yes, yeah.
Do you remember the episode with Ecky Thump? You know, whereas like, you know, they've got the black pudding or whatever, and he's developed some martial arts with black pudding, and they're wearing the big hats. You know, that's like a Yorkshire thing.
Yeah.
And I remember watching, you know, that version of The Goodies, and it's like Ecky Thump. And then when I went and lived in Leeds, like, I remember someone just saying, "Oh, Ecky Thump." And I'm like, "What? Do you actually say that to you?"
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I suppose it's like, you know, bloody hell, but maybe not quite as, you know, crass.
Yeah,
Yeah.
crass, yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, that whole Yorkshire thing,
But
you know.
so Yorkshire is a, did they have shipyards or anything like that there? Or like was it more for, because a lot of tradespeople came out of Yorkshire.
Yeah, well, I don't remember any, you know, shipyards. I mean,
okay.
Leeds is not near the coast. I mean,
Okay.
Yorkshire does. I mean, yeah, you've got further down, you know, there's Hull and...
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just trying to think of that. I don't think they're actually part of Yorkshire, you know, it's like that little state. But, you know, I mean, you've got, well, York, you know, it's an old city.
Yeah.
Actually, you're talking about Captain Cook, you know,
Yeah.
they've got a little Captain Cook statue at York, because that's where...
right. Where he came from, is it?
I think, yeah, did he come from there, or maybe that's even where he wouldn't have set sail from there because it's on the river, but yeah, I can't recall. It's a long, you know, well, not that long ago now, but I just remember going there and it's like, oh, statue of Captain Cook there.
Have they got actual pictures of Captain Cook? Have you ever seen a picture of Captain Cook? Like how he in real, like a picture of him, like a framed picture of Captain Cook of how he looked.
Well, I think there's only paintings or whatever. I mean, I'll probably just see what you've seen, mate. You know.
Yeah, I haven't seen the only ones I've
probably
seen.
One's wearing a curly wig.
Yeah, that's the only one I've seen.
Maybe he was bald. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? Although I've noticed in the last week, I've noticed a lot more people out. And I've noticed a lot more cars on the road, and I've noticed it just seems people, like you said earlier, people are a little bit more relaxed.
Yeah.
And I know that today they found 7 meat workers with they've been infected with coronavirus. So
I didn't read that article. I saw that headline.
They said 7, but it's actually 13 of them.
Is it? Yeah.
And so same thing, wider community. They've gone out and. Associated with other people and so on and so forth. The greater impact of that. But I can't see. I mean, this is the conflicting information that I don't understand, because you've got, on one hand, you've got 60,000 deaths in New York so far and counting. Mm-hmm. And then
I didn't realise it was that high, Pete. 60,000.
60,000 and counting. And I know when Morrison first shut everything down, he predicted there was going to be 100,000 Australians dead. That shocked me. That figure shocked me. And
I was just reading this morning. I mean, the initial figures, I think, given for Victoria, Melbourne, were 35,000, you know, kind of worst case scenario.
Yeah, and that's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. I was thinking about it. I was thinking, well, you know, even if... that would have been the worst case scenario. I'm thinking, oh, well, you know, they might have thought in their head, well, maybe we might only get 10% of that if we're lucky, but that's still 3,500.
That's
you know, that's a lot of people. So how have we come out of it? I mean, I don't know, nationwide, it's only in the 90s, or have we hit 100 people yet nationally?
Not sure of the figures.
So we're lucky.
Yeah,
we're lucky.
But we still have 3 months of winter to get through.
3 months of winter, yeah.
And if you look at say Singapore, we followed their sort of method with shutting everything down, but they've got a dictatorship where we don't have that type of system in Australia. But they use those apps that they're talking about, and they found that even by using those apps, they had a second wave of the corona, and it was it's been impacting on them more so than the original contagious that they.
Look, so you know, as far as the app goes, look, I'm quite ambivalent about it as yet. You know, there's you know, and it's interesting. You know, I brought this up with you know, a lot of my friends, and you know, and I've got a lot of friends who are tech savvy. You know, and they've been very much of the idea. You know, it doesn't really. You know, it's not really a tracker as such. You know, it doesn't track your position. And, you know, the way it works, and the code's all kind of open source, although it hasn't actually been released yet, but I think they're going to release it shortly. So that's kind of a comforting thing. I mean, from a computing perspective, when you've got people who can see the code and they can get down to the nitty-gritty of it, then that gives you some reassurance that there's not, you know, kind of something really nefarious going on. But then again, you know, I do see, you know, other points of view. Well, you know, are we going to get to situations down the track? You know, I suppose it's the whole slippery slope argument. You know, are you only going to be allowed to, say, go on international travel if you've downloaded the app? You know, my partner, she works in healthcare, so it would benefit definitely me to probably download that, because she will come into contact with a lot more people than what I will. I haven't downloaded it as yet. I kind of feel like it's a little bit unnecessary because I just sit at home. And but yeah, I think I probably will download it eventually. But I haven't as yet, and I can appreciate both points, and it's interesting, you know, just seeing, you know, stuff going back and forward on Facebook and seeing the arguments amongst my friends, who generally probably hold similar views on many issues. This has been quite, I found, divisive amongst them, so that's been quite interesting.
Okay. It's a tough one, isn't it? Because it's a moral decision that you have to sort of make in some way, you know. And when you talk about people's morals, that can be very vast and wide, you know, in terms of their belief systems and.
Look, I think fundamentally too. I mean, in Australia, we're lucky. And we do kind of rely, I think ultimately we do kind of trust, even though people say they don't trust the government, I think fundamentally we probably do. And so, like, I was in China just back in October, and, you know, everyone there, everything's done through, like, you know, those QR codes. So everything's done on your smartphone, you scan everything. Now, we don't have a government, well...
Not that we know of.
Not that we know of.
Yeah.
Not that we know of. That's true. But, you know, I mean, it was pretty obvious there that, you know, everyone's there is tracked, and they have artificial intelligence algorithms that, you know, kind of give people, you know, points and give them social ranking and stuff, you know. And I've heard of... You know, you hear of stories where there's people, you know, they might be in quite professional positions. You know, I heard of one, you know, it was like a professor at a university, and for whatever reason, you know, his kind of social standing went down a bit and it passed some threshold, and then suddenly you get people who don't want to associate with them because then they're worried that that's going to impact them. Now, we're obviously not like that, but I suppose that's where some people think, well, you know, if you got the wrong leader, if you got someone who, was a bit more authoritarian than some of our current ones, then that could happen. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I suppose the right wing of politics, they generally kind of talk about freedom, but you kind of find that there also seems to be, they do have a bit of an authoritarian bent to them as well.
Yeah, totally.
So, but that seems to happen on both sides of government in Australia, especially since 9/11, right?
Well, yeah, it's been a different world since then. But with that social ranking, I saw a Black Mirror episode. Did you see that episode?
No.
Okay, that was released probably about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And they did it in America. It was based in America, and it was based on this girl's workplace. And you get 5 stars, and you get ranked of how you talk to your customers, how you interact with your peers, and you could have a really weird situation, as you know. You could go to the shop and have a weird situation that gets you really fired up and really upset because there's an injustice there, and you react to it, and all of a sudden this girl says, "Okay, I'm downgrading you 3 points," and you've just worked 2 years to get to 4 points, and she's just wiped them out within one swipe, at the supermarket, and it was this whole downward spiral of her life, So the Tai Chi guys in Beijing, were they still out in the street doing their martial arts? Did you see any of that going on?
Yeah, I saw a bit of Tai Chi happening. Yeah, I was just at a shopping mall, just getting a few supplies one evening, and went out, and there was a group just doing it in the square at the shopping centre.
Fantastic.
Playing music. Yeah, it was
right.
about probably 30.
Yeah.
30 people.
All in sequence, or were they doing it sort of individually?
Yeah, no, they had someone who was leading them.
Yeah.
They had some music playing, and
Okay.
there was obviously various skill levels, different ages. There was a few people in their 20s. There was a few older people, probably in their 70s as well.
Yeah. They always amaze me, those Tai Chi's masters in China, because I've seen them where they're teaching or they're doing their movements, and they're old guys. They could be in their 80s, and then they'll sit down and smoke a cigarette, and that always fascinated me. It's like cigarette's really bad for you, and you're doing, and it's this what would you call that? You would say it's juxtaposition of your position. You know what I mean? It's not, really weird, man.
It's not like this Western ideal of we've got to have body beautiful and detox. No, they do it for. Look, they still do it for health, obviously, but that is. Look, Asia just has a higher prevalence of smoking, especially amongst men. But I've got a mate who's. He's right into martial arts, and he's like, his master who comes out from China every so often, he's just like, he basically chain smokes, but...
Yeah, it's incredible.
So...
because that would affect your breathing and your, but I'd somehow...
It's a bit of yin, bit of yang, mate, because, you do all the breathing exercises in your Tai Chi, and, it's probably got some similarities with yoga, and that type of breathing, and so
yes, sort of. Yeah,
in Tai Chi and martial arts, you've definitely got a strong focus on your breathing.
Yes. Which you do a little bit of.
I do
Kung Fu, right?
I do a bit of Kung Fu.
Yeah. How are you finding that?
I love it.
Are you? Do you get belts?
We do have, yeah. So the current system that I'm studying is, it's called Boxing Choi La Foot. So it's Choi La Foot. It's a type of a southern style, southern Chinese style of Kung Fu, and this is a particular kind of lineage of it called Boxing. There's others, Hung Sing, but
which one did Bruce Lee do?
He did. Look, I think he did a bit. I know he did some Choi La Foot. But he was predominantly Wing Chun.
Okay.
So, that's kind of the predominant style of Kung Fu that you'll see around Melbourne and in Australia.
Yes.
that's kind of, it kind of comes, it's southern China, it comes out of Hong Kong.
Yes.
So, my branch comes out of southern China. I mean, look, martial arts has a fascinating history.
Oh, totally.
It's so the southern styles kind of generally come out of a Buddhist tradition, whereas your northern styles, so things like Tai Chi, say, and they've referred to these like so-called internal martial arts. So there's Tai Chi and Xingyi and Bagua. They're kind of more northern, so up around Beijing area, and they come out of more of a Taoist tradition. Yeah. So ultimately martial arts, there's only so much you can do with your body, and fundamentally it's about taking someone down, right? But you don't you don't do it with the end goal of that. It's got
it's self-defense. It's
a self-defense. Yeah, exactly. But the health benefits are great. It's like
the health benefits are fantastic.
It's like I'm seeing all these people, suddenly stuck inside and they can't do their exercise. I'm like, I don't need anything to do my exercise. I suppose it's like yoga. What do you need? You need your mat. I can just do it in my lounge room.
Yeah.
And when you look at it, it's got, it's got everything. It's got strength, flexibility, coordination. It kind of really, I suppose it's like dancing in a way. You kind of get that left brain, right brain coordination. We're all obviously heavily focused on one side of our body, whether we're right-handed or left-handed. And so when, you've got normally a natural proficiency to do something one way, but then when you have to turn around and do it on the other side, it makes you think a bit more and it gets your coordination going. So, there's a lot of benefits, and, I love it. It's just, it's fun.
So what belt are you on at the moment?
Look, we start off with no sash, and then you go yellow, red, blue, then black, and I'm yellow. So, and Belinda and I have been doing it now for this particular style for 2.5 years.
Okay. Yeah.
Now. So, we were living interstate before, and we were doing another style, but kind of it had a lot of similarities. We're doing that for about 18 months, and I kind of done a bit of Tai Chi and stuff before, and look, I kind of dabbled in little bits and pieces here and there, and I used to did Taekwondo for quite a few years, when I was a young boy, up until I was about 18, and discovered beer and women, and that all kind of dissipated, but I've come back to it in my later years, and it's great. I kind of still amazed at some things that I can do with my body that I wouldn't have been able to do when I was 30.
Yeah, totally.
So it's great.
I mean, I did Tai Chi for 7 years.
Yeah. So
and that was primarily a one-on-one with a teacher. But then he insisted that I do a group workshop. And the problem I found with that, which sort of stopped me in my tracks from continuing and doing that, because I was really focused on the long form. I don't know if you know about the long form, the Beijing.
Did you did Yang style Tai Chi?
Yeah.
So the 108.
Yeah, the 108. And I was up to 52 or something.
Yeah, righto.
So I got halfway through it, and it took me a year to get through, to 52, and I still, I wasn't,
the 108's just like 5 or 6 moves done.
Yeah, I know,
repetitively.
But it's but it is
with a little kick thrown in,
a
kick thrown in at about 80 or something. Yeah,
but it's and there's spins and there's but it's really it's a formation that. It's really difficult because you really need focus, and it's not so much because they're doing it so slow. Yeah. That's the hardest thing.
Absolutely. I mean, that, my particular style, occasionally we will do it slow, but, my instructor has said, there's lots of benefits to doing it slow, and so I will do that. Ultimately they're all fairly similar body movements, but ours is generally done training. It's fast. It's kind of more of that external focus. But yeah, doing like Tai Chi and doing it slow, I mean, it makes you really focus on your breathing. And plus, when you're sitting so low, you know, it's like, you know, like you're on the stool, you know, sit back. It really makes you use all your leg muscles.
Right.
And, you know, when you've got to keep that kind of hollow chest and keep your shoulders relaxed and keep your head up, you know, the whole thing of, you know, feeling like you've got a silk thread holding you up, and
it's
you know
difficult.
you do that for half an hour, and it makes you focus on your balance, and you know, when you're searching with your feet, and you know, you got to do the whole kind of thing. Well,
that's right.
Feel like you're on ice, and
that's right.
You know, you're looking for you got to get grip there.
Yeah, that's right. And I was so frustrated because you know, I'd be bouncing up.
Yeah,
you know,
wouldn't be keeping the constant height,
and that's the problem. And where I found another problem, there was multiple problems with me, but but it's the hip movement and the hip movement. And then I went and saw a Qigong master who cured himself from cancer, believe it or not. And I saw this. I went to a health food shop and I saw his pamphlet. And it says, I've cured myself from cancer. And I thought, oh, okay, let me have it. So you had all this detailed information about how he did it, sort of thing, you know, a synopsis of how he did it. And I rang him. It took me about a year to ring him up. And he's out in Carnegie, and he works out of this little flat. And basically, his whole thing, because I said, look, I want to learn how to do Qigong. I've done a little bit of Qigong. Yeah. And he goes, okay, this is what you got to start off with. And you got to move your hips 30 times one way, 30 times the other way. Do that for a year. Yeah. I said, do that for, and then he would give me a mat. Well, he would give me a shower, a chi shower. So it's like a massage, but it's he would open up the blinds of his apartment. Yeah. And the sunlight would come through, and then he would energise the sunlight through his body into my... I know that sounds weird, right? But
look, I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff that goes on with martial arts, you know. There's a whole lot of weird kind of stuff. I mean, I don't really get into that, you know.
Well, but I've got to tell you that I could... His hands weren't on my body, right? Yeah. And I swear to God, I could feel... in my spine, from the base of my spine all the way up to my head, this sort of movement, and it was weird. And his hands weren't on my back. So, So I just thought,
power of suggestion, Pete. You know, I was looking. There's this video. I forget the name of the bloke now, but he is a magician.
Okay.
And, you know, he goes around to...
Darren Brown, is that the
That's
guy?
him. Yeah. That's him, yeah, Darren Brown, yeah. And he goes around and, you know, kind of shows how, you know, magic tricks and how the power of suggestion. And there's one where he goes to some martial arts club and they're doing, you know, these 1-inch punches, and people are like, you know, and he's punching from a distance or behind them, and the people are suddenly reacting, and it's like, you know, it's like at a distance. And then this magician guy goes in and he basically does the same thing as what their master has done, and all the students are all kind of sitting around going, well, what's going on here? And, you know, I don't know exactly how he's done it, but power of persuasion. So, you know, there's a lot of that infiltrates a lot of things, but it can happen in martial arts in particular. So, you know, like you're talking about Qigong, I mean... You know, so, I mean, traditionally in martial arts, and, you know, there'll be several facets to it. So, you know, Qigong's one aspect, and that's more about kind of keeping your breathing and keeping your qi, whatever that is, you know, based on a different model, a Chinese model, you know, meridians, I suppose, you know, ultimately it's just maybe keeping nerve pathways happening and muscles activating and so forth, and keeping your structure and alignment correct.
Yes.
And then you've got the martial aspect. I mean, say with Tai Chi, there's not really a lot of people who, you know, there's probably only a few people in Australia who could be able to teach Tai Chi in what I would say is a martial aspect.
Yes.
So my friend who's done martial arts for many years, you know, he's like, you would need to probably do Tai Chi for about 10 years.
Yeah.
being taught by
Yes.
a master before you would be able to find it effective in combat.
That's right.
So it's not something that you just start. You do a couple of years of Tai
No.
Chi, and you learn grass swallow's tail
Yes,
or whatever.
yes,
and,
yeah. But
something-
there are some forms, if you speed them up,
Oh, absolutely.
they can be very powerful.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
it's like so I've done quite a bit of Tai Chi, and so we'll do some of our stuff, and I'm like, yeah, well that's just what we did in our Tai Chi form, just done faster.
Yeah, that's it. So you were into Lou Reed, and
Lou Reed, yeah.
you were talking about Americans being non-conformist type of society.
Individual.
It's, okay.
Yeah, they hold the freedom of the individual
Yeah.
above all. Generally, yeah.
Because that sums up Lou Reed, really, doesn't it? Because he was a delinquent at school, and and for someone who was anti-authoritarian, because he was very anti-authoritarian. How he, and that was the thing about rock and roll musicians back from that era.
Well, that's just rock and roll.
That
isn't
was
it?
just rock and roll, because but you don't get that really now in rock and roll. You don't get that sort of upbringing where those kids have been thrown out of school.
Yeah, it's not like back in the 70s where there's a list of top 10 who do we expect to die this year.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. And so, Lou Reed, he's an interesting character because just his early years and how he transformed his not only his music but his persona. It was quite groundbreaking in a lot of aspects, especially in the early 70s.
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, look, when did I first hear Lou Reed? I was probably like everyone, Walk on the Wild Side. I probably just heard it on AM radio, and it was like, I remember it kind of capturing my attention, just thinking, oh, who's that guy singing? Just kind of like his voice. I mean, I know he doesn't sing like your traditional kind of singer or whatever, but yeah, there was just something about it. And then I suppose in my late teens, a brother of my friend introduced us to, the first Velvet Underground album, and I think I listened to that, and from then I was hooked. And this was, back in the late 80s, early 90s, music wasn't available as it is now, and, it'd be like going down the second-hand record store and there'd be a Lou Reed album, and I'd go and buy it, and, it was, it's not like now where everything's freely available, but yeah, for sure. I mean, he kind of set that, I suppose with a few others, obviously David Bowie and Iggy Pop, there was that whole kind of glam rock thing going on. But, I mean, ultimately behind it, Lou Reed had some kind of sensibility, I think, that was just kind of the street, of a particular time in New York. He sang about different types of themes that I suppose didn't really permeate a lot of music, but they would be there in literature, right? And you read and hear interviews from him and of him, and he's always like, the things that are just spoken about in literature. What's wrong with bringing those kind of themes to rock and roll? It all seems shocking, but you put them in a historical sense. You can go back to Shakespeare, and a lot of the themes that permeate Shakespeare. I mean, they're shocking themes, and literature going back to the ancient Greeks. But suddenly, someone puts it in rock and roll and talks about various issues, whether they be to do with death or violence or drug use or S&M or whatever it is, just different characters on the street. He brought a bit of a different sensibility, I think, to rock and roll, and I mean, the 70s, they were obviously pretty wild years for him. I've alluded to the top 10 people expected to die this year. I think it was kind of you'd have like Keith Richards, Lou Reed, Iggy Pop.
But interesting.
Except for Lou. I mean, Lou died a few years ago, but
and he was a Tai Chi practitioner.
Yeah, so in later years, I mean, I think he cleaned up his act in the early 80s, he gave up drugs and booze and stuff and took up Tai Chi, I think. I'm just trying to forget who it was. It's a well-known producer that kind of recommended. I forget his name, but anyway, worked a bit with Brian Eno and those guys, and look, he said to Lou Reed apparently, look, if you're struggling giving up the booze and drugs, I took up Tai Chi and it's good, it helps you deal with that, and so, and I think he took it up, and he was doing it, and I think in the 90s he discovered his a master who taught a Chen-Style Tai Chi, Master Ren. And so I saw a few concerts in the 2000s where he would actually bring him on tour, and he was doing Tai Chi on the side, Did you see any of those?
No, I heard about it. So he would actually, while Lou's performing, he'll be doing Tai Chi movements.
That's,
What,
so,
just stationary, or would he be walking up and down?
He would be doing the Chen, one of the, I'm not that familiar with the Chen forms, but I think it's the Chen 19 form. And so it's, it's like Tai Chi, kind of stationary. Yeah. But, and so Chen style's a little bit more kind of dynamic than Yang style. It does have a few kind of faster movements that kind of look a bit more martial. Yeah, so he'd be off to the side,
Was that distracting when you were watching?
Look, it was only for a few songs, and he would pick the songs that where it
enhanced it.
Yeah, where it enhanced it. Yeah, I mean, there was a woman on playing cello. What was her name? Something Scarpantoni. Anyway, to be kind of songs. I don't know if you're familiar with his 2000 album Ecstasy, but there was a lot of cello on that. That woman played cello, so there was a few kind of more kind of laid back, slower songs. So it would often to be just he'd come on stage and do a couple of those.
Yeah. Well, for me it was I again when I was also taken back by Walk on the Wild Side when I heard that, because that was sort of groundbreaking. Yeah. Because there was nothing else around that time that was. It just stood out, didn't it? It's just like all the other songs were pop songs, whatever. But then you had this song, and it was just so obvious.
And how did it slip through? The sensors to get on AM radio. Suddenly, referring to getting head.
Yeah, that's right. And take a walk on the wild side. But then I sort of didn't really look into Lou Reed up until New York. That album, New York.
Yeah, okay.
And I just thought, and I remember buying it from JB, and I listened to it, and I was just amazed how consistent that record was. It was just great.
It was a great album, 89 I think that came out, and that was just around the time that I was starting to get into Velvet Underground and Lou Reed and so forth, so then that came out, so that was a nice period, great album, and kind of went back to, I suppose, just a bit more of a rock and roll. A couple of albums before that, the one before that in particular, Mistrial, was it's probably the one Lou Reed album that I don't really
get into.
I don't even have it. I've tried. Well, I've listened to it in its entirety probably once, but besides that album, I know all the others back to front,
Okay.
And so that was, as happened in the mid '80s, there a little bit too overproduced, synthesizer. Poppy type of music, but he kind of just went back to two guitars, bass, drum, rock and roll. But and he kind of went a bit political then too. Whereas he was never, he never really kind of ventured into that realm or had too much to say about politics and so forth. But there were quite a few political statements on that album, which I think. And look, even after that, he didn't really write about politics. That was probably his only real political album. Yeah. That he had out of his whole 25 or whatever it was albums.
Yeah, I mean, The Great American Whale is a great
fantastic song.
That's a great song.
Fantastic song.
And it really brings home. I mean, as a young teenager when that was released, I was very ignorant in terms of my place in the world and how I contribute to the environment and how I just, just purely through my own actions, how I desecrate the environment, and it's weird how people like Jackson Browne and Lou Reed, just through listening to their music, informed me on those type of behaviours and what you're doing to the environment,
Yeah.
And it was really interesting because I was never a reader. A lot of my information came from
music
singer-songwriters,
singer-songwriters,
and that's where I got a lot of information from, which is a really strange thing, I guess, Well, it's been great talking with you, Justin. And
it's been great having a chat with you too, Pete.
Thank you, mate.
Look, thanks for thanks for inviting me around. I've watched a few of your other podcasts, and I feel a little bit out of place. The others have been kind of all, Melbourne music royalty, and I was just kind of,
I'm
your neighbour, mate. I could, kick a footy into your backyard from my backyard.
You do. But you're a quintessential scientist, so
thanks, mate.
You have your place in our on our mantle,
cheers, mate. I really appreciate it. It's always good to have a chat with you, Pete.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Justin.
Cheers, mate. Take care.
Left to flee when voodoo strikes. It'll tear apart your head when voodoo strikes. You wish that you was dead when voodoo strikes. It'll tear apart your head when voodoo